about what David has mentioned. For example, this decoupling story that everybody and all the brokerage houses are really focused on, decoupling of Asia. I'm not as convinced of it. We think of China as being less of an export economy over time, but actually that's not correct. Of course, there was a big, right before 2008, 42% of China's GDP was based on exports. And it's really leveling off, and it is supposed to probably remain about 35% until 2030. So if you're export-based, all of that, China is just so big in relative terms to everybody else that I don't think Asia can absorb alone all that growth. And what that means is if we have continued weakness in the European Union, in the US, and so forth, that's going to have a big effect. The monetary policy, what David's talking about, what I would like to underscore is what a fantastic call my husband made this year in May, because that is really the big story, I think, the strength, the weakening of the yen and what that might mean and so forth, in spite of all the trade tensions between China and Japan. I think it's a major story. With corruption and Chinese corruption, you know, I think corruption's not a moral issue. I think it's a developmental issue. And I think if you look at it that way, you understand it better. And, you know, I think that really to look at the institutions that are involved, David mentioned trade tensions. One of the big trade tensions now is that we have 100 Chinese firms that are in the U.S. who have either been delisted or have left the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange or have stopped their pursuit of that. And that's a real critical thing to me. Most people don't realize that the Chinese Stock Exchange, most of the shares are still owned by the government. And the free-floating shares are 99% owned by retail shareholders. It's not an institution-based exchange. And I think that leads it to that's why you're seeing this volatility and lack of strength in that area. Demographics. I think that demographics, there's a huge cultural component to demographics. Let's look at Japan. Okay, Japan has a shrinking labor force, but half their labor force, the most educated women in the world, are not utilized at all. And, you know, as someone who sent her children to Japanese school for